Hi friends, thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm excited to welcome as my guest today the husband of my previous guest, Cory Hardman. Cory and I met through the nervous system resilience class that we took with Leah Davidson. And when Cory's husband, Jeremy, heard the interview that we did together, it brought up a lot of memories for him, and he was interested in sharing his perspective on how he felt during those years. I'm so grateful for his willingness to share and think it would be really good to hear his perspective on the years and experiences that Cory discussed. Jeremy Hardman works at Hill Air Force Base as a civilian and has been involved in weapon systems sustainment and supply chain management, overseeing programs such as the C-130 Hercules cargo plane and the ground systems that support the ICBM Minuteman III missile. He has an associate's degree in web design and development. He owns his own graphic and web design company and helps clients create branding, logos, graphics, and websites they love. When not working, he enjoys spending time with his wife, Cory, and their 3 kids. Together, they enjoy camping, fishing, games, and just being together. He also enjoys creating art in many forms, including drawing, painting, chalking, digital art, and photography. Which is something that I think Cory mentioned you got even more into post-concussion, which we'll be interested. We should talk about that later. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks. I'm super excited for the opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us your perspective? I know Cory said a little bit about what happened, but why don't we start off with the injury itself? Just a quick little summary of it, what happened basically, and what was your experience of it?
Okay. So like Cory had said, we were on Trek. I was up there doing their videography, and it had been several days of just shooting video and then editing at night and going right back at it again. It was our last day there. We were taking down camp. A lot of the boys were, helping to clean some of the stuff up. And part of that was unloading a bunch of firewood into like a pinned off corral. And they were doing that while I was taking my tent down nearby. And just out of the blue, all of a sudden, it felt like somebody just ran up to me and soccer kicked me right in the mouth. Like it had hit so hard, and I didn't see it coming at all. But the board was thrown. It was ricocheted off of the top of an end cap of a post, and it just found me. I was like the only one in the entire area like that it could have found. And
so lucky.
Yeah,
oh man.
So split my lip really bad. Felt kind of nauseous. Right after it happened, there was a medic on site and a nurse, and they both kind of came over and assessed me. And I felt fine after the nausea started to clear up, and they put some ice on it. They were a little bit concerned about teeth because, it hit so hard. But everything seemed good. So we just kind of packed up, but they were enough concerned that they didn't want me to wait for the rest of the camp to leave. And so they found somebody that was headed back like within the short time. And so I jumped in their car and, me and my son and just headed back. So
did you lose consciousness at all?
No, I didn't.
How long?
As soon as it hit, I was like yelling. So I was very conscious.
Okay. Well, that's a natural response. I think like, what is happening to me? How long did the nausea last? Do you have an idea of how long that was?
It probably wasn't more than like 15, 20 minutes. Like I said, I laid down when the medic. I went over to the medic because he was like right by me, and so I went over, told him what had happened, started feeling nauseous, put my head down, and then he laid me down, put my feet up, and I probably laid there 15 or 20 minutes, and then it kind of passed. So,
okay, that was just the immediate stuff. And then on the way back, she said that you had been you kept doing screens and working on editing the videos. Is that right?
yeah, so we had a 5-hour drive home, and it was Saturday, and then we were supposed to have all the videos and everything ready to present on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And I still had like 2 videos that I wanted to do from footage that we had captured. And so for 5 hours, I was in the back of a car and I was just like head down, just going and, editing the rest, trying to edit the rest of it. And I ended up getting one more video done, but then I had one left. So
did you notice during that car ride, like, were there symptoms that were coming up? Could you tell that you were being affected by the injury?
It was business as usual. Like I didn't really notice anything, and maybe I was, but I just maybe contributed it to, being car sick or something, but I don't recall anything immediate at that time. So.
Okay. Interesting. So how long did, until you started noticing the symptoms, and what did you notice?
So we ended up getting home, and like as soon as I walked in the house, she looked at me and she's like, yeah, something's not right. And I remember, like, I look back at pictures of that day and my eyes were glossed. Like I definitely had a look to me. And so I felt a little bit off at that point, enough that I agreed to go to the ER, even though like I had a bunch of stuff I still needed to get done. And so we went to the ER. That whole experience happened there. And we came home, and it was either Saturday or Sunday. This is where things, I guess, start getting foggy, is after the ER, because Saturday or Sunday, it was either Saturday night or Sunday morning. I remembered going back to my computer to try to finish editing the last video. And at that point, like I couldn't even function. Like I couldn't remember how to do anything to edit the videos. The light was way too bright, and I was like, I can't do this. And so I ended up asking my son to finish the last video for me. And then I went in my room and just completely blacked everything out. And at that point, I'd never really had a migraine in my life. And I could not believe the intense pain that I was experiencing in my head, and then the brain fog that was just coming on with it. Like even having all the house blacked out as much as I could in that bedroom, it still wasn't enough. And I just laid there in a lot of pain.
Oh, man.
So. And
this was did you know that this was related to the injury?
Yeah, at that point, I pretty well knew, because we had been to the ER. They said the mild concussion. And so at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what a concussion apparently is like. And migraines are, little did I know, becoming a normal for me at that point. So. Right.
Because if I remember right, Cory had said that they'd said it was, it would last a few weeks and you'd be over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it went well beyond that.
Yes. Were there any other symptoms that you want to make sure that we talk about at this point that came up for you?
At this point, I really wasn't noticing a whole lot else. There definitely was more that came later, but that was a lot of the immediate things at that point. Was just the migraines, and then the brain fog was starting to set in, and I was noticing slowness and different things. So.
Mm-hmm. And Cory mentioned that you returned back to work pretty quickly. What did you notice going back?
So that was interesting for me, because going back to work, it really didn't feel too different. Like I actually was able to go back to work and hide it fairly well. It just, I guess what I was doing at the time was routine enough, and there was a lot of like rules and regulations that I kind of had to follow that I already knew. And then some just procedures. And so for me, it was actually fairly easy being back there. I think it was later that I started noticing some more of the problems being there. But like I noticed meetings were really hard for me. I couldn't pay attention at all in a meeting. And with my art, there was like my art all of a sudden got really better, like quite a bit better. And I found that I wanted to draw. And so I started drawing during the meetings. And next thing I knew, I was actually paying attention better during the meeting while I was drawing. And so, like, I even remember having to explain that to one of my higher leadership one time, like, sort of like, no disrespect, but like, in order for me to pay attention and really get anything out of this meeting, I need to sit and doodle and draw while we're having this meeting, which, of course, that sparked a big, long conversation of why. So, but he was okay with it. And so, yeah, I just kind of found that was a new thing for me there at work. But
oh, very interesting. Did you do you do a lot of screens? Like you said that initially, you were doing that video again, it just brought on those symptoms of migraine really badly and stuff. Did you experience that at all with doing screens at work?
Yeah. So while I was there at work, I usually could get through the day. At lunchtime, I would usually like kind of turn the screens off and just sit back, relax, try to sleep a little bit. I only had like a 30-minute lunch. And so hurry and eat and then try to sleep at my desk. Or later, I discovered some music, which I can talk about later on, but I would throw my headphones in and I would listen to it. And it was about a 20-minute-ish piece that I would listen to. And by the end of that, I actually felt like recharged.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about that. So the major symptoms of like the significant headaches and stuff wasn't necessarily happening at work?
They were later on, like I guess, actually, I'll be honest, there's some fog there. I'm not sure how much they were really happening at first, but definitely they did start in to the point where like I was leaving work at times to be able to go home and just sleep that off. So.
Okay. So, but in general, you were able to do the work that you needed to do. And imagine it took a lot out of you.
Yeah, it did. It took a lot out of me. I would come home just completely crashed out. Like I couldn't function. I'd walk in the door and basically go straight into sleep.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned later discovering about the artwork helping you concentrate in the meetings and talking to your boss about that. If you wouldn't mind sharing, was there a time when you told, like, how did you approach that with your bosses or whatever? Like, did you tell them right away that you'd had this head injury, or was that a scary thing to bring up at all?
So I told them pretty much immediately coming back, because I had like a great big split in my lip, and it was apparent that I'd been in a fight of some sort, right? And so walking in, I like my management was like, "What happened to you?" And so I told them what had happened, that I'd been to the doctor, on Saturday, told me that I had a mild concussion and needed to take it easy for a little while. And they were pretty accommodating and just kind of said, well, do what you can and try to rest. And if you need to head home, just let me know and we'll put you on leave or whatever. So they were really good right then. It was later when they tried to put me on FMLA that when the doctor did that's when like I kind of started freaking out about it. And I didn't want that stigma. I didn't want to be the person that was on FMLA and that was leaving all the time and wasn't reliable and wasn't able to get their work done and have all of that come up. That's when I really started to try to hide it more at work and just really push through. And then, of course, I was coming home not being the best me. And it just continued to compound and created so many more problems in both areas. Mm. Not so much, I guess, at work. So when I say both areas, like work definitely was taking more of my better side than my home was. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's a very understandable and probably common experience, that once you realize, okay, this is having longer effects than I thought it was going to. And then, yeah, all of that stuff that you brought up, really, those are significant things to be considering and like how you want to show up. So thank you for sharing that. How did your life change following the concussion? You shared some of it, but are there other things that were just noticeably different post-concussion?
Yeah. So like making decisions at home was extremely difficult. Like Cory had mentioned some of that, just those simple decisions like, what do you want to eat? And I should give me two options. If they were two really good like options that either one I would be fine with, I couldn't decide on one. It was just literally, and you mentioned that book. I'm actually going to go look it up and read it because I want to hear that perspective from him about it. So
yeah, that goes to my brain. It is definitely a good book to listen to or read.
Yeah,
I know that's how I consume my media these days, but yeah.
I'll be listening to it.
Okay, yeah. So the decisions, what else?
So the decisions were really hard. I was just sleeping a lot at home. From work, I'd come home, like I said, being completely fried, and just like I hated locking myself in my bedroom and sleeping in there because it made me feel like I was kind of a bum, like I was turning into somebody that I just really didn't want to be, and just really undependable. I felt like I was a total slacker husband. And so I started thinking that if I slept out on the couch, that would be better, because then at least I wasn't actually hiding from my family in my bedroom, right? Because so I'd sit on the couch, I'd pull my hood over my face, and I'd just lay there and try to sleep. And sleep just really wasn't the same as what it used to be. I'd lay there and my brain would kind of be shutting down, but I could still hear all the conversations that were going on in the room. And definitely it was not restful at all. And this was even kind of compounding at night. I'd lay down and rest and try to sleep through the night. And I remember dreaming a lot, and the types of dreams, I would explain them like MC Escher's staircase. So the one that, is a continuous staircase, like you can go up it and down it, but it's just an optical illusion. You're really not doing either. And so that was more like what my dreams were, is like I'd be running circles of events and trying to achieve something, but I was just always barely out of reach of accomplishing that. And it was like I just couldn't shut anything down enough to really get into that good REM of sleep. So that was tough. Words were hard. Like I couldn't find the right words to say. Cory mentioned I think it was the flashlight examples, the one that she gave.
Yeah.
So that ended up being in September. So June-ish is when I think that happened. And then in September, we were at a family gathering and my son was standing there with me. And I was trying to explain to whoever I was talking to, which by this point, the conversations had been going on for a good couple hours and my brain was just done. And I'm trying to talk to him about whatever it was talking about a flashlight. And so I'm like, I can see it. I could totally visualize what it was. I could visualize what it did. And I knew that I knew the name of it, but I couldn't come up with the name for no matter what. And for whatever reason, it was like a repeat loop. Like my brain wouldn't move on until I came up with it. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, the thing that you like flip the switch and the light comes on and you hold it in your hand and it helps you see in the dark. But even that was hard for me to try to come up with those right words and descriptors to actually put it out there. And then my son looks at me and he's like, "You mean a flashlight, Dad?" And I'm like, "Yes, that."
That's the word.
Yeah. And as soon as it came, it like stuck. Like my brain, it like reaccepted the word almost. And it was like, okay, you know what a flashlight is now. So bizarre things like that all the time.
Yep. That's just so, yeah. It's very common for people to experience that. But if you've never had a concussion before, if you don't have any previous experience with this, then that's very disconcerting. And yeah, just a really common concern that people have can be challenging for sure.
And in that scenario, like it was frustrating, but it really wasn't like overwhelmingly frustrating. When it would become more frustrating is during a conversation that was of importance, like, trying to just talk to Cory about things and try to talk about dinner or talk about whatever life was coming up. And I couldn't ever articulate the way that I used to be able to. And it was just, man, it was frustrating so bad.
Yeah. Did that come up at work as well?
Probably. I don't know that I really remember a whole lot of it coming up, which is interesting because I do remember giving some briefings to even some of my upper leadership, and to get up and present, like, I did great. So it was really weird how things at work weren't the same as things at home. And I hated that too.
Mm. And do you feel like you were aware of all of it? I mean, I guess, I don't know. Could you feel the deficit? Could you tell that that was happening and it was a frustrating experience?
Definitely. I could definitely tell at home that I was not the same person I was at work. And I know I didn't really probably talk to Cory a whole lot about that during that time because I didn't want to be not bringing my better self home. So.
Right. Yeah. And Cory had said that it was hard for you to read other people's emotions and to portray your own. And I'd love to hear more about that. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So, especially like trying to read body languages or just even tones in people's voices. Like, people would say stuff to me and I would either like immediately like take offense to it, or just completely like take it out of context of what it was that they were saying, to where either I felt like a huge threat from them, or I would just like, I just didn't understand exactly how they would have said something like that. And then on the flip side, I was doing it back. And of course, if I was doing it at work, everybody probably just thought I was a jerk. And so, although I do remember a couple times there was some interactions that had happened and we walked away, and whoever was with me was like, dude, you kind of let him have it. And I was like, I did? Like, I didn't think I did. And they're like, no, you did. That was awesome. They needed it. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it was beneficial, I guess. They were like, hey, go grab Jeremy. We got to go choose somebody out.
That's really funny.
But yeah.
Super interesting that you didn't recognize that that's how you were coming across.
Yeah.
That is challenging. Yes.
Which that totally was changing my relationship with Cory at home, because like Cory was my everything. Like, she mentioned a little bit about her health challenges up to the point of me getting the concussion. She didn't get into a lot of detail of it, but more or less she was going through a lot of stuff for several years. And it was so bad that at times she really relied on me to do a lot of the stuff for her. And it was even as simple as like me coming home early to pick the kids up from school because she was feeling so crappy that she couldn't go get them. And then it was also things like, me fixing dinner and just kind of helping the kids, and she'd be like crashed out on the couch. She was having a lot of blood pressure issues. And so like, there were days that I would have to carry her to the dinner table. I'd carry her to bed, and, she'd go to bed early and I was staying up helping take care of the kids. And so that completely flipped and changed. Here I am now basically becoming the patient and her being the caregiver, where I was the caregiver and I was the one helping take care of her. And I was even so like intuitive into her needs before the concussion that there were times that I would just respond without her ever even saying or asking anything. And so like, once that intuition was gone with the concussion, like it was hard for both of us. I mean, definitely hard on her, and it was hard on me because I was seeing now the hurt that I was causing. I wasn't being there for her like I knew I needed to be, but there was nothing I could do like that. Like, I didn't see her needing me anymore. And even when she would ask for help, sometimes the way that my brain would process it, it was more just like a quick reaction. Here's whatever it was you needed. When in all reality, there was more behind the ask. And so like, I couldn't tell any of that. And like, I know I kind of joke that, Cory would totally agree that I was not a good patient. Like that. Yeah. And so just seeing all that, like, I was broke. Like, I knew I was broke, and I knew that no matter what I do, nothing was fixing it. Like, I would try to change the way I would say things. I would try to purposefully like focus my attention to the tone of my voice and say something, and it didn't matter. Like I would almost like tell her I loved her, and she's like, "Why are you yelling at me?" Like it just, it was like,
Oh.
why are you, saying it sarcastic or whatever? Like there was just no control of the tone of my voice at all. And
Mm.
so that was really causing a lot of me to pull back, and it was causing like depression. Like I kind of had dealt with it a little bit before this, but man, this just brought it out like no tomorrow. And of course, when I say this, I mean the concussion, and then all of these other things, seeing the hurt that I was causing her, not being able to just, be there like I used to be, and be like, it brought in like a huge recipe to just brew up a big pot of depression and dark, deep depression. Like it was not good. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That sounds extremely challenging, especially since you knew that you weren't showing up as the husband, the father that you wanted to be. And yet you felt completely, it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you felt completely unable to do anything about that. And like you didn't have any control.
Yeah, I really felt completely out of control, like at this point, as far as being able to re-navigate my life back to where I wanted to put it. Like I before the concussion, I would run running half marathons. I was doing CrossFit, longboarding with my kids, as being that caring father, the caring husband, and spending time with all of them. And I went from that to being the monster on the couch that was sleeping with his hood over his face, and everybody was walking on eggshells, not wanting to make too loud of a noise in fear that they were going to wake me up. But yet I was just laying there, being angry with myself, and just basically building that depression and just putting myself into more of a darker depression. So
yeah. And that's something that I noticed when you were talking earlier. You mentioned it both in the work setting and at home, just kind of, not wanting to be undependable. Is that the word? Is that a word? Not dependable, feeling like a slacker, like all of these things. It sounds like there was a whole lot of judgment of yourself that probably definitely added to that depression, right? That negative self-talk does not help. And again, it's understandable that's like that it would naturally, your brain would go that way, because it sounds like those other, being dependable, being there for people, like that's something that's important to you. And then when that ability gets taken away, it makes sense that that's kind of where the brain would go to just like beat yourself up on it. But I think recognizing that is that's not helpful is important. How did you deal with that, with the depression part, the self-judgment, all of that? How did you cope? And was there anything that helped get you out of that?
So at the time, looking back, I did not cope. Like I definitely did not know how to get myself out of that. And I really contribute a lot of it to Cory, for her kind of recognizing that and either bringing it kind of up to the doctors to help get me on some better medication, or, telling me to go lay down, like sending me to my room, and like Cory had mentioned, we came across the Resimax tuner. Like that ended up helping a tremendous amount. Like that whole experience there was amazing.
You want to tell us what happened?
Yeah. So little things kept happening all the time, that we would find just these little miracles that would come into play, and little solutions to just help. And this was totally one of those moments where, for whatever reason, God, I think, kind of led us down this road, and we ended up at his place in Logan.
The guy who who created the Resimax, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So we ended up there, and it was night and day difference for me. Like walking in and walking out of that office were two different men. Wow. Like I walked in angry and like wanting to argue all the way there. And, we had like an hour and a half drive. I'm sure by the time I got there, Cory was like calling the lawyer, like, I'm done. And when we left, it was a little bit of the old me coming back. Like, I remember putting that tuner on for the very first time and just having this complete flood of relief come across my entire body. And he called it like the runner's high. And I, of course, recognized that from running. I was like, holy crap, that is that. And I don't know what it was. Like, I think it was maybe just a release of some of the trauma and the like that I was holding onto. But it just completely was that warm engulf feeling to come through my entire body. And it was like a clarity opened in my brain a little bit. And I definitely noticed the more I used it, the more that would help. And it, that kind of helped bring some of that depression back down. But this was, I mean, I'd have to go back and actually look at timelines, but this was not very quick after. This was a year or so after the concussion. So
yeah. Can you describe for people listening what the ResiMax tuner is? Like, what does it look like? What does it do?
Yeah, so it's a tool. He described it as vibration that heals the nervous system, I believe is how he kind of describes it. And it has a specific frequency of vibration, and you can put it just about anywhere on your body. It's like a handheld device, like a toothbrush almost, and has these little forks that kind of come off of it. And you, like, when I had that happen, I had it right behind my neck on my, like, kind of my back, like touching my back and my head, and was more or less just had it right there. But I used it, there was like some very specific places, that he would have you use it, like on my head. I can't remember is it the vagus nerve, and on the side there, and then underneath on my chin and on my chest, and then on the back, but just behind my head. So I do kind of that sequence of events, every day for a year and a half, 2 years after we found this. Mm-hmm. And it just, I could feel like every time I did it, I could feel a little bit better. So
do you feel like the changes, like the improvement that you were making lasted? Did it build on itself?
It built on itself. Yeah, it definitely compounded to start that relief and kind of get me back into the healing process.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know they do use that device at the clinic that I work at as well. It can be helpful. So that's awesome. I'm so glad that you found it. And it does sound, kind of miraculous that you were able to get that help in that time. So
yeah, and I would even use that when I would feel migraine starting to come on, and then it would basically stop the migraine. So it was even being that effective at that point. So
huge. That's a big deal. Is there anything else about, you talked about this a little already, but I want to make sure that you get to say anything else that you wanted to, anything about the change in your relationship with Cory and how you coped with those changes?
So definitely the changes that was happening between us weren't good. Like I would even dare say up until probably a year ago, we weren't ever the same as we were before the concussion. And we were trying all the time to just, I was trying all the time to make things better. Sometimes it just didn't happen, and I'd completely take backslides to the point where, I'd cause pain and trauma back to both of us. And like our relationship since she's became a life coach has gotten way better. I think a lot of it has just been those core elements that are being taught, that she now teaches. And the more that she has taught me about that stuff, the better that definitely our relationship has gotten. And I believe a lot of that has to do with kind of what you talked about earlier, just that self-talk and understanding these are your circumstances, and these are just thoughts. They don't have to be your thought. You can have a different thought. And so being able to have that power to change those things, I know has really helped me a lot to no longer be that guy on the couch, the guy that I, at times in my mind, I was thinking that Cory hated, that like I could see the pain I caused her. So in turn, I just felt like she didn't want to be with me anymore, and that she was, done. And just any day I expected her not to be home almost when I'd come home. And I wouldn't have blamed her. I'd have been like, yeah, I wouldn't live with that dude either. Like, he was horrible. So, and there were times too that I was like, this is, not my problem. You need to deal with it. You need to be the one to overcome this and quit expecting me to be somebody else that I'm never going to be again. But in turn, I was also mourning the loss of myself. I no longer was that person that I wanted to be. And I, like, it just, yeah, it wasn't good either way for either one of us. So, but
yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I think, again, these are the kinds of things that I imagine a lot of people who have a spouse or significant other who's experienced this and has all these changes that are happening. And like, this is stuff that people go through and it doesn't get talked about a lot. So I really do appreciate you sharing and being really open and vulnerable about that, because it's real and it's raw. And I think if people see that that's not only normal in this situation, but something that can be overcome, like you guys, it sounds like you're in a much better place. And I love what you mentioned about the life coaching tools. And I know that Cory's mentioned the nervous system resilience tools, those kinds of things that are so helpful. And I want to jump into those a little bit later.
We can jump in now if you want.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do it. So tell me I know a little bit about Cory's story, like and it's similar to mine as far as with life coaching, like learning the thought work, the way that our thoughts impact our feelings, and then the way that we respond, and how key and core that is to everything in our lives and the results that we get. And then discovering the nervous system piece and how that plays in. So how has that been from your perspective, watching her experience that and what you've learned from her?
So from my experience of it, first of all, she like started in doing the life coaching stuff, and I could see changes in her happening. And so it was cool to see that. But then on top of it, as she would talk about it, like, I was resistant, of course, and so, but I was also willing to listen to her, kind of talk about her experiences with the coaching and learning that. And as she talked about it, of course, I started applying it. And that started just those small baby steps to change that mindset and that perspective change. But then when she jumped into the coaching with the the
nervous system stuff.
Yes. Thank you. That word. See, I still am doing it a little bit. The nervous system stuff, that has been more life-changing, because some of the tools that she's been teaching with that to me, like, I went from up until just this summer, like, I would still come home and have a nap. Like, I'd still fry out after work. And even sometimes on a Saturday, I'd be fried before 11, like, because I guess no different routine for me. I don't know. But since she's been helping with some of the tools of that, like, I haven't been coming home and crashing out and having naps after work. So just little things like that, I'm totally seeing these new things heal and new things kind of come back to me that were years ago. So
that's huge. That's so awesome. I love that. Can you share with us some of the things that have been particularly helpful, or the things that you've learned that have made a difference?
Yeah. So part of the relaxation techniques, some of those that she's been teaching, some of the meditative, I don't even know what to call them, but just meditations that she's learned and kind of helped me to do. So breath work has been big. Recognizing the emotion of like anxiousness just coming up in me, and being able to relax and recognize it and call it what it is. And then, recognize that I'm grounded, I'm okay, I'm safe, and I just can let it pass. Like little things like that. It's been awesome.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so cool, because yeah, it is. It seems so little and so maybe insignificant, but it makes all the difference. It's a really, really big deal. That's really cool. And just it helps me feel like, yes, coaching works. It works for everybody. Like whether you've had a concussion or not, it is important.
Yep. Like I've had a lot of experiences where like I have felt that anger and that emotion coming back. And because like Cory mentioned a little bit, but I was real quick to anger. Like I would jump off that cliff real fast. And it was so easy for me to just go there. And then, and I now I'm recognizing it way before I ever jump off, and I can stop myself because I'm recognizing it, and I can just allow that emotion to just kind of sit for a minute, call it out, recognize it, let it pass, and then allow the situation to occur and be like, I really believe that has been transformational in my life to the point, where like there's things there that I want to talk about, but I can't. So like, just because it involves other people. Right. And so, but just definitely there's been situations that I can say would have went south real quick. And because of her training and me applying it, they didn't. They actually turned out to be amazing experiences. So
that is awesome. Thank you. And I love that. But also it's, I think, really important to note that one of the reasons probably that you were experiencing anger so quickly is that nervous system dysregulation. With a concussion, there's a lot of things playing into that. Your impulse control gets damaged, your ability to reason through things. Like there's a lot that's happening in your brain that helps you to control yourself and not get angry and act out on it. But your ability, and I love that you applied the things that you were learning, and it just shows that these things are effective. Again, even if you've had a concussion, but like you can, when that awareness and of what you're experiencing emotionally and the capacity to step it back and breathe, like allow your nervous system to calm down and like awareness and then acting on that awareness makes all the difference. Even if it's coming up more frequently because you've had the brain injury, knowing how to handle it makes a really big difference. And like you said, you notice it ahead of time. And so you're able to stop things before it gets to like past the point of no return. And I imagine you'll just keep improving on that, even though you've experienced this damage to the underlying systems that usually help with that. So that's really good information. Thank you for sharing that. And good for you. Like I really do. Like I like want to clap for you. Like that's really impressive and hard work to do. So I appreciate the example that you're setting too. So that's really awesome. Thank you. I'm curious. You mentioned before about music that was helpful. I'd love to hear you tell us more about that. What was that, and how did you find it?
Yeah. So we had some family friends that came over, and we got kind of talking a little bit about everything that was going on. I don't remember when this was. It probably sometime within that first year after the immediate concussion, and it was kind of out of the blue. He just all of a sudden was like, I know something that I think could help you. And he said, so it's George Frederick Handel is the one that composed it, and it's called Water Music.
I love that music. Okay, keep going.
Hey, so you've heard it, right? So he's like, he kind of had a backstory about it a little bit, and I know I'll probably totally mess it up, but more or less, he was saying that when they've kind of done some studies on it since, and for whatever reason, it almost seems to match the brain wave patterns and I don't know where you got his information, so I can't quote it, but I was all in. I was like, sweet, this sounds great, and so classical music I've liked, and so anyway, that became downloaded on my phone and was like my go-to whenever I was starting to feel like I needed something to just help snap me out of, that either the brain fog, the depression, the just feeling like I needed to sleep, or the feelings of, not being able to control my nervous system. I'd just throw my headphones in, I'd pop it on and just let it play out. And by the end of that, I had to listen to it in order. I couldn't shuffle it. And if I did, by the end of it, it was almost like I got that same type of relief I talked about with the Resimax tuner, but on a smaller scale. And it was just enough to just kind of help reset everything almost. Like sometimes I would still end up needing to sleep later, but this was became a big routine of mine for lunchtime at work. Is I just throw those in, turn the computer off and just let it play out. And that was one of those small moments that was part of that healing process that was critical for me to be able to get where I'm at. So
that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think music can definitely play into emotions and everything. So, and that's a good tool and tip for people who might be dealing with something like this is, give Handel's Water Music a try. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that it could have that kind of impact. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
and maybe it was just me, but I definitely love it if others tried it, because for me it was life-changing. So
yeah, another one of those things that came right when you needed it. That's really, really cool. So Cory had mentioned that you had some neuropsychological testing. What would you like to tell us about that? How was that experience for you?
So it was frustrating. Like I remember sitting in the actual testing. So I've actually had it done twice. And I know the second time Cory didn't mention it, but yeah, I've had it done twice. So the first time was, shortly after the concussion. I think she said it was somewhere about, I don't know, somewhere a couple months after. And then the second time was about 5 years after the concussion. So
Sorry, I just realized I don't think we've ever said on this. We did in the other one, but you're currently about 7 years post-concussion, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just want that to be out there. Okay, thank you. Keep going. Sorry.
So the first time I went into the room, like my dexterity, they did like a bunch of testing on dexterity and how quick I could assemble things and put stuff together. Like I didn't feel like there was a lot of problem there. Like I actually think I surprised the person that was doing the testing of how well I was actually doing that part of it. But when they started asking me the questions, there was a bunch of questions that they'll ask during this testing. And I would just sit there and they wouldn't say anything. So I just sit there. And because my brain was trying to process the question and find the answer. So as long as they allowed me to sit there, eventually the answer came. Or there was a few times that I do remember, saying, I don't know, I have no idea. And it was questions like, who is the president, during this time or whatever, like weird things like that. So, or they would say a bunch of words and then you had to repeat those words back to them. And, so sometimes I would, like I said, I'd just sit there for a second, let my brain try to process it, and eventually I could find it. So not only was that frustrating sitting there and then answering the questions, but later finding out, when the results came in that everything was showing as fine, I was like, things aren't fine. Like I shouldn't have to sit there as long as I was sitting there to try to come up with those answers. Like, yes, I may have been able to answer them, but I should have been able to answer them like super fast. So
Interesting. So they didn't necessarily take into account the length of time it took to answer the question, it sounds like.
I guess not. Yeah. So, I mean, they didn't really give a lot of detail of the results. They more or less just came back and said, based off of the results, this isn't your concussion that is causing you to have these problems. And like, for me, I was like, yeah, it is. Like, it's gotta be, because if it's not, then that means that, that I'm now like causing all this pain and this hurt on my family and on Cory, and I'm not functioning the right way. And I'm having all of this depression that I never had. And I'm having all this slowness of brain and brain fog. And you're telling me that all of that is just me. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm like, just go get my cauldron, because you guys just gave me another big dose of dark, deep depression ingredients. And I'm just going to go stir this thing up, because if I can't be healed or get better from this, and you're telling me it's me, then what's the point? I'm done. Like I just got it during that time. That was, definitely during some of the darker times. And so like, I just wanted to crawl in a big hole and just let it in, because like that's not who I wanted to be. And that's not the person that I wanted my family to be around and have as a father and a husband. And so that definitely made me draw back more, and which kind of put us back, into that really bad pattern that was going to consistently be there for years. And so the second time I went and had that testing done was probably 2 years ago, if we're saying 7 years now. It's Cory, I was forgetting things. Like, we would have a conversation and I wouldn't even remember the conversation. And it was things like she would, want me to do something. And I'm like, I don't remember you ever even talking to me about this, let alone asking me to do this thing. Or there's just lots of issues of what she thought was maybe dementia coming on. And I was just like, okay, like I don't know any better. So if that's what you think, then I would probably agree with you, because I do not remember those conversations. And so we went and had the same type of testing done again. This one was just a little bit different. So they did all that same type of dexterity type testing at the beginning. And then the second half, they gave me an iPad and they had questions on it. And the questions were kind of going back to that, do you want the apple or the salami, right?
Yeah.
So which one do you want? And it was like two good questions, and I couldn't decide between the questions. And so it was taking me a while to answer the questions. And the training, or this test, was supposed to last all day, and it lasted all day, and to the point where they were closing down the clinic. And I'm still trying to answer these questions on this iPad, and I am getting so frustrated. I am ready to chuck this thing across the room and just tell them, forget it.
You're exhausted too. That's intense for anybody, but man.
Yeah. And like I say, all the questions were those types of questions. And then they would just ask the same question, but in a different way. And I'm sure there's a reason behind it, and I'm sure that it makes sense to people that analyze it. But on my side of it, I was just ready to chuck everything and be completely done. And so finally got through all that, went back for the results, and got kind of the same type of an answer as we did the first time. Is none of this is his concussion or post concussion anything. He's fine. There's nothing that we can see that is wrong with him. And even the depression, they said, we're kind of reading back through on the notes, it says more or less, we'll say he has depression because his wife has said that she has seen things that bring that up in him. And so, and some of his childhood things that have been mentioned. And I'm, because like I mentioned, I do remember having some depression before concussion. But yeah, that was even more frustrating. And that wasn't that long ago, that here I am again, now being told that all these things that are still happening are just not anything to do with the concussion. They're all to do with something else, I guess. They never really gave us any hope. There was no diagnosis to say this is what it is and this is how you could maybe fix it, even though it's not the concussion. They just were well, I guess that's who he is. And that's how I left there, feeling yeah, he's just a jerk.
Wow. Was there any so no hey, you could maybe try this therapy or go to this doctor or try something?
The second time they suggested I went to go, I think, see a psychologist and, basically kind of go down that road. But of course, poor Cory, I left there being there's no way I'm doing that. I'm so done. I'm not going back to another doctor in my entire life.
That's fair. I don't blame you for feeling that way. Yeah. Memory issues are 100% part of concussion, post-concussion stuff as well. So that's really interesting. And I can see how that would be discouraging to again, get the news oh no, you should be okay. You're fine. It's just you.
Yeah.
So what do you believe about it now at this point? How do you see things?
I do see things as getting better. I know that I'm way better than I was, and I do see some hope, for the future. And I do believe that most of that has come from those little small miracles and small things that were put into my healing path. and which is including, Cory's coaching and kind of that whole new cognitive side of it that she's been learning. So, but other than that, like time, like I feel like maybe time is the only other thing that I've got to maybe help me. So yeah.
There are definitely things. What would you like to share about any lessons that you've learned through this experience that you haven't already mentioned?
So lessons that I've learned through all of this is definitely Cory knows best. Like I've learned that one for sure.
Everyone listening, if you have any problems, go to Cory. She's gonna
Yeah, I mean, the caregiver truly can see what could be done and is there to help. And I definitely wasn't giving her a lot of the credit that I needed to in listening to a lot of the things. And I'd argue with her over a lot of stuff and eventually give in. And every time I did, I would realize, I should have just gave in from the beginning. And so the longer that goes on, the more I understand that. But like, I didn't mention this, but at one point, like before concussion, I felt like I was fairly spiritual, that I had an easier time, like kind of deciphering and feeling the spirit to tell me, like, help me and stuff. And since concussion, that's gone. Like I had to relearn how to feel that. And for a while, when it disappeared, I felt like God was just one more person that had abandoned me and had said that my behavior was not adequate. And so like that he had drawn back, and taken that from me. And so definitely one thing I have learned is that that's not true. Like he doesn't do that, he's still there. And that's why those small things came into my life.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that perspective too, and that's something that has come up with other conversations that I've had with people, is that feeling God, feeling like you can access that and feel that relationship gets interrupted by an injury like this. That doesn't mean he's not there or doesn't care about you, but it is hard when you can't feel that. If you wouldn't mind sharing, if it's not too personal, I would love to hear how you came to that and like how you were able to relearn it and develop that again.
Like I was angry with God at first. Like I was pretty upset. So I think finding some forgiveness there helped me to get back into that. Finding some forgiveness for myself has really helped. I would say that that's probably been one of the most critical things, is finding some forgiveness for myself. And then trusting in him and his timing, and just kind of allowing his will. And the more that I do that, I think that meekness is truly what brings us to him. Meekness and humility. And then believing that the things that I had felt at one point were still true. Believing that the Spirit could be there trying to talk to me again, and just allowing quiet to enter back, which was hard because post-concussion, my brain never shut down. There was not ever quiet. And so meditation, finding some of those other small things there, and sitting and just allowing that quiet come back. That's when I would sometimes, at the first getting those feelings back again was during those times. Definitely the commotion was not allowing it to come in, and I was causing commotion and chaos. Like it was easier to live in that all the time around me, and so I would create my own. And I think that, and I only say that now looking back at it, I didn't realize I was doing that at the time. But that's where my new comfort was. It wasn't sitting quietly because I had to deal with my anger with God, my anger with myself, my anger with doctors, my anger with, Cory for not being more sympathetic. And, and here I am, the one that's causing all these things. And I think that's where that forgiveness, the humility, the humble meek and charity all came kind of back in, those key things to be able to get that spirit back. And I still don't feel it like I ever used to. Like it's different. It's different now than it was. And I have to remember that and recognize that. So
thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And again, if this is too much, you can say no, but I would love to hear how you found that forgiveness. I think that would be helpful for people to just maybe have a hint of how to get that, where to turn.
I don't know that I could pin it on one exact moment. I think a lot of it was just probably still continuing to go about my faith the way that I always had. And just knowing that what I was doing was what God would want me to do. I don't know that I could say there was ever one specific moment that truly, that I sought it, right? Like, I think that I always was hoping to eventually have it one day and be able to really forgive myself. I don't know, maybe I'm not all the way there yet. Maybe I still need some more of that, but definitely I think at some point I kind of had realized that even though I was being told by many sources that this concussion had not changed me, like I believed it had, and I had to believe that the things that I was doing was not truly who I was and not who I wanted to be. And I just continued to strive to become back to that person that I once was. And I guess maybe that's where some of that forgiveness started to come in a little bit. But definitely more recently, things have changed between Cory and I enough to where we're good again, and I think part of that had been some forgiveness in there as well. I think recognizing my circumstances are not necessarily who I am, but they are just my circumstances, and that I can change my thoughts on those circumstances. Like, I know that that's been a big contributor in that as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I think that the self-forgiveness and the improvement, like all of these are things that we're all working on all the time. Like there's always going to be room for us to get better at those things. But that's a beautiful perspective, and really I appreciate you sharing that. And are there any other, what advice would you give to people who are loving and supporting someone who's dealing with a concussion?
First of all, I'd tell all the caregivers out there, I'm sorry, because the pain that they're feeling is real and they're going through, is hard. And know that we don't mean to be doing and acting the way that we are. Like, and I say we as, post concussion. Like, I know for myself, I'd act terribly. And oftentimes I'd want to just lock myself in my room. And so I was grateful that I had somebody there who was willing, to say those hard things, like, hey, like, you're not being very kind right now. You need to go in the other room and, and take a minute. And like, yeah, it would make me angry. Like, I'd get mad. Nobody wants to be told that, right? And so, but I'm grateful that I had somebody there that was doing that. I know Cory didn't want to be my mom, but sometimes the way I was acting, I needed a mom, and I needed somebody, to give me that tough love and to kind of help me maybe through some of the decisions that needed to be made. So be okay to make those decisions for those people sometimes, and tell them that this is what we're doing. Like, don't be afraid to say, you're not in your right mind right now, and you need to listen to me. So definitely that would be some advice that I would give to caregivers that are dealing with people with concussions is, know that they're not in their right mind. They're definitely trying their hardest. They're beating themselves up inside. And, once they kind of recognize that those things are happening, that self harm talk is going to happen, and be there to love them, support them, it doesn't mean you have to always put up with them, send them in their room. So
No, that is excellent advice. Thank you. I think that people, it's helpful to know that the way someone's acting, and I think this is true for anybody, anytime, but the way someone's acting is a reflection of what they're dealing with inside. It's not about you, it's about them. So like when you were going through this, yes, it sounds like there was some lashing out that was going on, and like people obviously their defenses would go up. I imagine I can just see that playing out that way. But trying to remember that, okay, they're not in a good place. This is why this is happening. And just really trying to access that love and compassion and separation from the situation if you need to, right? Like you said, like send them to their room if they need to go to their room or whatever, or separate yourself if you need to. I think there's important things to consider in that way as well. But yeah, that remembering that they recognize to some degree that they're not showing up the way they would like to, and that's hard for them and probably impacting the way that they're responding to things. So
yeah, absolutely. I know there were a lot of times that I would be reacting more off of myself than I was off of the other person or the situation. I would be reacting off of the initial reaction that I was giving. And so like I'd get angry or I'd get frustrated, and then that would just compound and build, and I'd get even more frustrated or angry, and then fight or flight would kick in because I had, just that dysregulation and that's where I went. So
yeah, and it happens. Are there any other treatments or things that you did? You mentioned the Resimax and the music and other things. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned yet that you would recommend people look into or think about if they're trying to find some help along the way here?
Probably not. I think Cory probably had mentioned some stuff in there, and definitely life coaching has been a lot of help for me towards the end of this. And had I had that sooner on, like sooner in, maybe things would be had been better sooner. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that she found it. You found it when you guys did, and that it's been so helpful. I think there's definitely hope for continued healing and things like interval training, and there are, specific cognitive exercises and things, but it sounds like you're doing so much better. And again, just the cognitive effort that it takes to do that thought work, to recognize where, like, what your emotions are doing and to question your thought processes, like that's good cognitive work right there. And it sounds like it's been really beneficial. So that's really important and good. And something that's kind of similar to what you were saying, the water music did for you. I don't know if Cory's talked to you about this, and this is something that I share with people that go through the program with me, but it's brainwaves. Have you heard of that? Brainwave entrainment?
I haven't.
Okay, we'll talk about it more later too. Okay. But for people out there, that's something you can look up, especially if you have, I know on iPhones, the brainwaves, it's called 35 binaural beats brainwaves, and it does a similar thing where it helps your brain to get into a rhythm, a status that is calming and helpful, or it can also help to help you focus, things like that. There's some cool stuff with it. And a podcast that I did with Dr. Mark Allen, he explains better than I can how that works. So we'll hook you up with that. Yeah, it can be really helpful. So that's another tool that I'll just throw out there. But anything else that we haven't covered that you would like people to know about your experience or concussions in general, or any more wisdom you want to share with the world here?
Another thing I'd say, just as far as on the person on the concussion side, is find something that you love to do that you can still do. I know there was a lot of times that I would get super frustrated because I couldn't turn the TV on or I couldn't grab my electronic device. And when I did, I was causing problems with myself, with, family. And so I would say definitely find something that you can do, that you enjoy to do, and allow that to kind of be your go-to when you are just needing something to do. And at one point, art became that thing for me. I don't know why, but my art has changed completely. before concussion, I could draw a little bit, but I would have never said it was that good. And now I still would probably say it's not that good because I'm self-critical. But Cory, I know at one point I surprised her. We had gone to the art store, the craft store to grab some stuff. I walked past a picture and I was just like, and this was, a couple months after, so I'd already been kind of doodling and drawing a lot during my meetings. And so I walked past this picture and I'm like, oh, I'm going to draw that. And Cory's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, no, really, I want to draw that. I said, as a matter of fact, I want to do it on a canvas and I want to do it with chalk. And I said, so I'm going to go buy some chalk and some canvas. And I'm sure at this point she's like, I don't want to sit and argue with you in the store. So it's easier for me to just let you do this, right? And so I did. I went and bought it. And of course, kind of took a picture of the picture and went home. And I drew it. Like for whatever reason, my brain understood exactly the colors I needed to put down first, like the way that I needed to just lay it all out. Like dimensionally, I think some of that came back, like I was just there from the beginning. But being able to actually put it back onto the paper was crazy for me. And I know it was crazy for her too, because like I said, I had done some drawing and art before, but definitely this one, it jumped out. Like it was like, holy cow, like I can actually draw. And so definitely it had been fun to play around with that more, as the years have gone by. And I've been able to do some of that same type of thing with, with paints, with chalk, with ink, pen and ink. I do a little bit of that. And of course, getting into the whole digital side of the world, I do a lot with that too. And so
that is so cool. Thank you for sharing that too. And that, yes, I think doing something creative, like having a creative outlet is really healthy for, again, everybody, but finding something, like you said, that you can do that is going to be a good outlet for you is really important. That's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here today and being so real and honest with what this experience was like for you and Cory as well. I really sincerely appreciate you guys being willing to share this. And I think it will be really helpful for people who are hearing it and can recognize parts of your story in what they're experiencing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate your podcast and definitely getting the word out, because had more people known, I think, a little bit different aspect of concussions, I would have probably been treated a little different over the course of this. Maybe the healing would have been faster. So
well, hopefully this will help other people's healing go faster. So thank you for going through it and sharing it. It does make a big difference. I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.